On the 6th of August 258 AD, Pope St. Sixtus was beheaded along with 6 of his deacons by decree of the Emperor Valerian. As is always the case when the church faces persecution, the church's property and documents were seized too. St. Lawrence now found himself as the most senior cleric in the Diocese of Rome, but only for 4 days, for he too was summoned to face execution, but to bring with him whatever had been entrusted to him by the martyred Pope. When he arrived for his execution, Lawrence brought with him a crowd of the poor, the sick, and the disabled. This, he said, was the church's true treasure. People such as these make up the wealth of the church. Lawrence was then led away to his execution, where he was roasted alive on a gridiron. In the portion of 2 Corinthians we've just heard, St. Paul is trying to inspire a little philanthropy. Those in Greece are encouraged to give money to help with the relief of those in Jerusalem. And when we think of ending poverty in our contemporary world, or of bringing someone out of a place of poverty, we think of a kind of financial, domestic, a kind of personal or emotional stability. We want to make these people in some sense self-sufficient. But St. Paul's vision is different. For Paul, any kind of sufficiency is a gift from God. But not only does God give us what is needful, God also bestows those things in order that we can be generous to other people. God's gifts are given to us precisely so that we cannot pull up the drawbridge. They're given to us precisely so that we cannot be independent. This is made clear in Paul's quotation from Psalm 112. He scatters abroad, he gives to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. Psalm 112, which tells of the just man, forms a pair with Psalm 111, which speaks about the righteousness and justice of God. In other words, there's some connection between the generosity of God and the generosity of the just. It's precisely because God is merciful and compassionate and generously provides all of our sustenance that we can do these things too. Paul then makes an allusion to Isaiah, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food. The full text in Isaiah is one which we're familiar with. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return, but water the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes forth from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose. Just as God's word does not return without accomplishing its purpose, so it is the case with the many blessings which God bestows on us. God gives them to us for a purpose, and that purpose certainly does not mean hoarding them for ourselves. St. Maximus the Confessor tells us that we should give alms in imitation of God, giving to all and making no distinction between evil and good, just and unjust. This participation in divine goodness, in divine generosity, which should mark our charitable giving, is what it means to live lives patterned on the Holy Eucharist. God gives us something and we give it in return. This is at the heart of the Mass. God, through his goodness, gives us the bread and wine which we offer to him. We, the holy people, offer our sacrifice to God from the gifts which he himself has given to us. And in doing so, we offer our very selves as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. Just as this is true of all of us at Mass today and at every Mass, it is especially true of the martyr who makes a gift and offering of their life to God. The early Christian martyrs saw quite clearly that relationship between the sacrifice of Christ, the sacrifice of the Mass, and the sacrifice of their own deaths as martyrs. St. Ignatius, writing to the Christians in Rome, asks that he be granted nothing more than to be poured out as an offering to God. At his martyrdom, Polycarp prayed, "May I be received in your presence today as a rich and acceptable sacrifice." Lawrence's martyrdom is beautiful because it so precisely encapsulates this Eucharistic life. The liturgy, and especially the Mass, teaches us that all of the good things which we have, which have been given to us, are not things which we can hold on to or hoard. The Eucharist both realizes and reveals the unity of believers. It shows us that nobody is truly self-sufficient. nor should anyone really desire to be. Our care for the poor, the sick, and the disabled is an expression of this Eucharistic life of mutual dependence, because these people, who Lawrence rightly saw as the Church's treasure, are those who our society disregards, precisely because they are not self-sufficient. It's this Eucharistic life which St. Lawrence witnessed to in his death. Martyrdom is certainly heroic, but for all that we should not see it as an individualized thing. Lawrence's death offered everything back to God. It held nothing back, and it was a death which speaks of his complete lack of self-sufficiency.